We have an awesome speaker tonight. She has gone through so much. Her name is Dakota, and she had leukemia at 2.5, and she's going to share her story with us. So please give it up for Dakota.
Hi, these are Trent and Sarah. They're one of my best friends, and they're both standing up here with me tonight, supporting me. And I would like to share some stories of my life. My name is Dakota Smith, and I'm 13 years old and in the 8th grade. When I was 2.5, I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I received 2 years and 2 months of chemotherapy, and I am a survivor. I'm walking today not only for myself, but for my Uncle Jason, and especially my Grandpa Bob, who's back in Michigan and is suffering from advanced metastatic prostate cancer, and he is only 55. I'm also walking in memory of my Grandma Chris, who passed away just last month from mesothelioma. I've had many family members stricken with different forms of this terrible disease. One grandfather, one great-grandfather, one grandma, 2 great-grandmas, 2 aunts, and 1 uncle. Now, I would like to share with all of you, a little insight about my cancer and the treatment I went through. I'm sure most of you won't be surprised, but each survivor's story is a little different. However, for me to do this, I will be relying on my parents' memory because I was too young to remember much of it on my own. I was 2.5 years old in June of 1999 when I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I just remember that I was very sick and that my stomach hurt a lot. My liver and spleen were swelled to almost 3 times their normal sizes. My parents had taken me to see a pediatrician a couple times during the week, trying to figure out what was wrong. The pediatrician decided that I needed to go to the ER. I arrived at the ER around 5 p.m. on Friday night, and by 2 a.m. Saturday morning, I'd been diagnosed with leukemia. I stayed in the hospital for 6 days and received my Broviac catheter and 2 rounds of chemo before I ever went home. I was home for 12 hours and my parents had to rush me back to the ER. The chemo had done its job and had killed a lot of the cancer cells. But in the process of killing the cancer cells, my kidneys were overwhelmed and couldn't get rid of the dead cells fast enough. My kidneys had almost shut down and my calcium and potassium levels were way off, and it was affecting my heart. I spent the next 5 days in the pediatric ICU in Harvard. I was admitted to the hospital one more time again in November with a normal cold and a nasty cough. But I was very weak and needed 4 days of IV fluids and medications before I could go back home. I was lucky from then on, for the most part, and I didn't need to be admitted to the hospital again. Over the next 2 years, I received a chemo regimen through my Broviac catheter, intramuscular steroid shots, which really hurt, numerous spinal taps, bone marrow aspirations from my hips, chemo treatments directly into my spine, bone marrow biopsies, and a whole host of medicine. I received my last treatment the day before my 5th birthday, and I was thrown one heck of a Barbie party the next day. It will have been 11 years since my diagnosis date this coming June, and 9 years since coming off chemo, and I'm happy to say that I'm considered cured. Did not have it easy, but I'm glad that I was so young that I don't have to remember a lot of it. I see my parents start to cry when they try to tell me these stories or even talk about it. My parents have told me stories that I've heard a few times, and I would like to share a few of them with you. They have told me that for them the hardest part was letting the doctors take me and perform the necessary treatment. When I was crying out for my mom for them not to let me go. They said the phrase, I want my mommy a lot back then. They said they talked about it to each other and they had decided that my getting taken away for treatment and then brought back into the room, waking up in pain, would have been like a 15-foot tall person walking into the room with a needle that was the size of their arm, and then picking them up and taking them out for treatment. They said it must have been terrifying for me, but that I rarely complained, that I just let them do it. And that was the very hardest part to watch. My parents also told me that one of the worst parts for them was that it all seemed normal to me. Heck, I didn't even know what the difference was. When I went to preschool when I was 4 and still had my Broviac catheter. I had about 15 inches of tubing that stuck out of my chest, and most of it was under a bandage. But the end of it was loose. My parents had sewn a tab into all of my undershirts so that they could pin the extra tubing down so that it wouldn't hang free and couldn't get pulled. So here I am at my first day of preschool, and this little girl saw the safety pin sticking through my shirt, and she asked what the pin was for. I could tell her that it's for my tube, silly. She, of course, didn't understand what I was talking about. I tried to explain to her a bunch of times that the pin was what was holding my tube in place. She didn't get it, so I finally stopped trying. I came home that night and complained to my mom that I must be in the wrong class at school because they were all babies at school, and the silly little kids didn't even know what a tube was. I didn't think I should have to go back anymore, but my parents unfortunately disagreed. So here I am, still trying to explain to other kids what cancer is and why they should care, and why they should help. At least now all of my friends understand how important this fight is to me. And if most of them weren't gone on the 8th grade field trip in Washington, D.C. and Florida right now, they would all be standing up here on stage with me right now. The last story I will share with you is about the first night I was in the hospital. It was about 4 a.m. and I had been poked and prodded all night. I had been forced to drink the contrast fluid for a CT scan, which I remember was very gross. I had an IV fluid that had taken 5 attempts and so on. Basically, I had had enough. It was about 4 a.m. and my dad says that I was sleeping in bed with my mom and the nurse. And the nurse came in to check my vitals. She was checking my vitals and whatnot, and she woke me up. My dad says that I sat up straight in the bed and told the nurse in the meanest growling voice that a little 2-year-old girl could produce, "You take your hands off me." My dad said that he went to get out of the chair and tell me not to talk like that to the nurse. But the nurse turned around and stopped him in his tracks. She told him, "You just sit back down in that chair, Dad. This one is going to be just fine. We don't worry about the feisty one. That little girl is a fighter." I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming today. You have donated your time, your energy, your love, and of course your money to be here today. I especially want to thank all of the caregivers that have given so much of themselves for each and every one of us. I want to thank you on behalf of not only myself, but for all the survivors that are here tonight and those survivors who are not able to be here in person. I congratulate everyone's successes and pray for all those still fighting. Please join us to celebrate, remember, and fight back. Again, my name is Dakota Smith, and I'm 13 years old, and I am a survivor.